Imagine a hidden army buried deep beneath the earth. Its secrets have lain undiscovered for many years. Thanks to time and the length of history, what treasures could lie within? Why was it built, and by whom? Advanced technology has begun to pierce the veil of mystery, revealing a world frozen in time. Life-sized figures stand guard, their purpose still unknown. Was this a palace, a prison, or something even stranger? Qin Shi Huang was born in the state of Xia in 259 BC and became king when he was only 13. Even though he was young, he was very determined and had a knack for winning. Qin Shi Huang's conquests involved conflicts with several other states, including Han, Zhao, Wei, Chu, Yan, and Qi. These states were engaged in a prolonged period of warfare known as the Warring States period, from 475 to 221 BC, during which they competed for dominance over China. With the help of his smart assistant Liu and loyal general Wang Jian, Qin Shi Huang slowly but surely defeated the other 6 fighting states, starting with Han in 230 BC and ending with Qi in 221 BC. He called himself China's first ruler and said that this was the day that the country was united under his rule. Smart political alliances, smart military operations, and smart government were all hallmarks of his ascent to power. Qin Shi Huang wanted to do more than just be the ruler. He wanted to make his kingdom even bigger and better. In order to do this, he started a huge number of projects and made changes. He unified and made consistent the writing system, money, weights, measures, and rules, which made government work better. He also built a huge system of roads and waterways to connect different areas and make trade and communication easier. He was especially important because he ordered the building of the Great Wall, a huge wall that ran along the northern border for thousands of miles to keep out wandering attackers. The total length of the Great Wall is estimated to be around 13,170 miles. The Great Wall played a crucial role in Chinese history, serving primarily as a defensive fortification against invasions from various nomadic tribes and military incursions from the north. The goals of these projects were to improve the empire's infrastructure, economy, and safety, securing Qin Shi Huang's reputation as a creative leader. Qin Shi Huang was interested in things that were mysterious and unknown. He went on dangerous journeys to discover and map the unknown lands beyond his limits. His desire to live forever became a passion that lasted a lifetime. It led him to order the famous terracotta army to be built as part of his tomb. The secrets of the terracotta army are like the layers of earth that buried it for centuries. Each layer we peel back reveals another piece of the puzzle, bringing us closer to understanding the enigmatic emperor and his vision for eternity. Life-sized clay troops, horses, and wagons were carefully set up to look like they were ready for a never-ending fight. Skilled artisans crafted each soldier by hand, using molds for standard parts such as heads, torsos, and limbs. However, each soldier was individually sculpted to give them unique facial features, hairstyles, and expressions. The artisans used clay from local sources. The terracotta army not only showed how ambitious Qin Shi Huang was, but it also shed light on an interesting part of old Chinese history, leaving a legacy that will last for hundreds of years. Qin Shi Huang did a lot of great things, but his rule was tainted by scandals and tough punishments. A lot of people were afraid and angry at him because he did bad things like burning books. People rose up and rebelled against his power because of this harsh rule. Also, his big, risky building projects like the Great Wall and his tomb required a lot of people to work on them and a lot of resources. This made people wonder how he treated workers and what the social costs of his goals were. There are some legends and stories surrounding the construction of these projects, some of which involve the idea that the bodies of deceased workers were buried within the wall itself. Qin Shi Huang's rule came to an end in 210 BC. The terracotta army remained undiscovered for over 2 millennia. Shortly after Qin Shi Huang's death, the caverns containing the terracotta army were buried in the earth. They were not found until 1974, when farmers digging a well in the Shaanxi province of China accidentally discovered the first pieces of the army. To start, some farmers in Xi'an, China, were digging a well as a simple project. It was a normal dig, but they had no idea that it would lead to one of the most amazing historical finds of the 20th century. With their shovels and picks, they dug deeper into the ground and found several pieces of clay that they did not know the significance of. When the farmers realized how valuable their find might be, they did what they were supposed to do and told Chinese governmental officials. Scientists quickly became interested in the amazing find after hearing about it. Initial teams were sent to explore the spot, which helped figure out the initial size and possible value of the find. It was clear right away that this wasn't a normal historical site. It was a huge underground structure with a whole army of life-sized clay troops, horses, and carts. When the terracotta army was found, it got a lot of attention around the world and sparked people's imaginations. Not only was it an amazing historical find, but it also taught us a lot about Chinese history, society, and military strength in the past. These weren't just faceless soldiers. They were individuals, each painstakingly crafted with unique features and expressions. The terracotta army reminds us that history is made up of individual lives, each with a story to tell. Archaeological research uncovered 3 big underground rooms, called pits, holding broken pieces of terracotta soldiers. The find quickly gained national attention. The clothing on these life-sized, lifelike clay models of fighters is very detailed, and they still have traces of the paint that was on them. The clay soldiers didn't look like any other tomb models that had been seen before. Also, pits 1, 2, and 3 were only a small part of the huge structure that turned out to be the first emperor's grave. The mausoleum is a huge group of tombs that are built around a tumulus, an ancient burial mound. The complex covers 4 square miles. The tumulus, which stands out in the landscape, was long thought to be the grave site of the first emperor. However, until the army pits were found, no one knew how big the underground complex really was. Often called a mausoleum, the first emperor's tomb complex is much bigger and more complicated than that. It has a network of pits, tombs, and buildings above ground that circle the burial room under the tumulus. For example, the army pits are 1 mile away from the tomb. After more than 30 years of digging, which began with the first finding in 1974, only a small part of the complex's full size has been found. 2 raised walls encircled the tumulus, which was a part of the tomb structure. The walls used to be 33 feet thick and had huge gateways that were cut into them. These gates no longer exist, but you can still see the openings. The burial mound is on the southern side of the walled enclosure. On the northern side, there is a walled-off area with 34 unopened companion tombs and a group of above-ground ritual buildings that are no longer standing. These buildings were used for ancestor worship rituals where sacrifices of animals were made for the dead emperor. Under and beyond the walled area is a huge underground complex that includes a network of pits and smaller tombs for people and animals, as well as underground walls and drains that keep the structure stable. Under the tumulus is where the first emperor was buried. The main reason it hasn't been dug up yet is because of concerns about how to properly protect its contents during the digging. But using scientific surveying methods like magnetic anomaly surveying, archaeologists have been able to find the burial chamber and figure out where it is and how big it is. Magnetic anomaly surveying is where variations in the Earth's magnetic field are measured by the differences in the magnetic properties of subsurface materials. They have also found that walls of brick and packed earth surround the tomb chamber to keep it from flooding when the water table rises. We learn about the grave chamber from Records of the Grand Historian, a significant written source by Sima Qian, who lived around 94 BC. To fill the grave, copies of castles, beautiful towers, and the 100 officials were brought along with rare tools and interesting things, he wrote. Mercury was used to make models of the 100 rivers, like the Yellow River and the Yangtze, as well as the seas. These models were built so that they looked like they were moving. There were pictures of all the celestial bodies above and parts of the earth below. Many years after the first emperor died, Sima Qian recorded the history of the empire that followed. Sima Qian is still a very important source of information about the first emperor and his tomb, but he was biased, and in his writing tried to make him seem like a cruel and overbearing leader. Scholars have used this text to help them better understand the different pits and places in the tomb complex, but we still don't know for sure if the tomb vault has rivers of mercury and a dome that shows the celestial vault. Sima Qian talks about a tomb complex that tries to copy the buildings, landscapes, royal treasures, and even the people who lived in the Qin Empire. This is a big change in the way scientists understood Chinese tombs and burial practices. Since the early Copper Age, the most powerful people in China have buried religious objects made of copper, musical instruments used in ceremonies, and carts pulled by horses that had been killed. By the time of the Qin Empire, all of these things were well-known signs of power. During the Warring States period, before the first emperor unified China, kings started to divide their tombs into sections that looked like rooms. This showed that they started to think of the tomb as a copy of a house, or even a luxurious property. However, the first emperor's tomb has the most extensive plan of any building. In the past, kings were happy to take their valuable weapons, religious objects, and horses with them to the afterlife. But the first emperor rebuilt whole stables and garrisons and added life to them with clay figures doing daily government chores. What about the treasure that was found? A 164-foot-long pit inside the walls is an important find. It holds 2 copper chariots, one with a roof and the other with a closed room. Both vehicles accurately copy every part of a wooden chariot, but they are made of metal and are only half as big as the real wooden ones. The person with the crossbow is driving the chariot with the cover, which is in front of the second car. A figure on its knees pulls the second chariot, which has a closed chamber with windows and a roof that slopes downward. The metal walls of the room still have detailed cloud and circle designs that can be seen. Archaeologists think the copper chariots are replicas of the first emperor's real vehicles because this fancy chariot fits the accounts of the vehicles he used on his trips to the empire. Even though it's fun to think about the emperor's spirit riding in these chariots, no one agrees on where he would go. Some researchers think that the chariots could take the emperor to a faraway heaven or help him go back and see his royal tours after he died. Some people have said that they could just take his spirit to the recreation of his pleasure grounds on the other side of the tomb complex. In a different hole, there were 12 clay figures wearing long coats with wide arms and unique hats that made them look like officials. Their coats even had tools on them for fixing mistakes in writing on bamboo. They stand for the empire's government machinery. A big pit to the west of the inner wall holds hundreds of horses that were killed and sacrificed. These horses are thought to have been from the royal stables. In nearby smaller pits, there are individual animals in pottery coffins, such as rare types of deer and birds. Ceramic servants and grooms watch over the bodies of the animals. Horse sacrifice was standard practice in ancient China, when important people were buried with their horses. But the first emperor's mausoleum has more animals killed than any other tomb. Archaeologists even found hay on the floor, which makes the clay grooms and servants look like they are standing in a stable. One of the pits on the eastern side holds a different mystery. 87 sets of armor and caps made from 80 small stone plates fused together with bronze wire. Each set of this strange armor was too heavy and stifling to have been worn in battle. Scientists still do not know why stone was used to make this armor instead of clay or something else. From the 4th century BC onward, Chinese tombs often had copies of everyday items that were made on purpose from the wrong material. These were called Mingqi, which means spirit articles. The tomb of the first emperor does have stone armor plates, though. They are the only things in the tomb that are made of stone. At that time, some people thought that stone had special powers that could protect against ghosts and other bad spirits. Some say that the stone armor was given to the loyal terracotta soldiers in case they had to fight a magical enemy of the first emperor's spirit, like the angry ghosts of his former enemies. Another pit with half-clothed figures that are all different in size and shape is one of the most amazing finds. A strong man moves his strong arms and shoulders, making it look like he's pulling on a weight. Some people think that these figures, which are usually called acrobats, are a group that will perform for the emperor in his next life. However, other ideas have been put forward, such as the bare-chested figures being troops in training or figures competing in a cauldron lifting event. This idea could explain why there is a huge, beautifully crafted pot in the same pit. Scholars have said that events where people lifted heavy metal cauldrons as part of weight training, which often happened at religious festivals in the fall, were a show of both physical strength and military power. Other things related to the tomb have been found outside the rectangle walls of the tomb area. A trench that runs the length of the F-shaped pit surrounds it. The floor of the trench is covered in mud, which shows that it was used as a water basin. It had ledges around it where metal birds were sitting. It looks like the people kneeling on the makeshift windows in the pit used to play wooden instruments as performers in an underground garden. Imperial parks, which were big enough to hold shooting parties, were a big sign of royal power for the Chinese government. A high terrace called Hongtai, which means terrace of wild swans, was made so the emperor could shoot wildfowl from the park of one of his houses. A lot of other tombs have been found inside and outside the emperor's tomb area. Even though they haven't been excavated yet, the tombs inside the courtyard may belong to the first emperor's concubines and close relatives. Written records say that some of them chose to die with their emperor while others were forced to. At the same time, several hundred much simpler tombs have been found with the bodies of criminals and workers who were made to work on the tombs. Some of these tombs have small pieces of clay that show the person's name, city, rank, and sometimes, if they were a prisoner, what they were punished for. It is known that some of the workers were severely beaten because of injuries found on bones in these tombs. The bodies of women and children were also discovered. These people may have died because of the Qin's principle of kin responsibility, which said that the whole family should be punished for the crime of one person. The workers' bodies remind us of the lives that were lost in order to build this amazing archaeological wonder. Based on what we've seen, the tomb of the first emperor is the biggest and most detailed tomb ever built in China. However, we can only guess at the purpose for this underground city. Was it meant to be a real place for the first emperor's soul to rest, where the terracotta slaves and troops would come to life and serve the dead master in the tomb? Or would the beautiful underground palace only be a brief home that the emperor's spirit would visit often to receive the sacrifices made in the temples that circle the grave mound? Or did the complex of holes and rooms in the tomb serve as a model for the future that the first emperor's spirit would be going to? Sadly, there isn't a clear written record of how the emperor and the people who lived during his time thought about the future. It seems that people think of the tomb as a place where the dead can rest and receive gifts from the living. This idea is supported by both physical and written evidence. But this was just one idea about the future. Experts are still not sure about these things. We still don't fully understand what the tomb of the first emperor means. It is both the most important piece of historical proof for a big change in Chinese funeral society and a big question mark. The emperor is not in his own grave or with his army. There is a statue of the great king in front of the Museum of the Terracotta Army, but it is not based on a figure that was found. The inscriptions he had carved into the stele are the only written records that come close to describing his vision in his own words. He explains his ideas about government in these writings. Not only did the first emperor see himself as a great warrior, he also thought it was his job to bring new order to the world he ruled. To this end, the army and its officials and workers all made of clay, show his image of a well-run government. They are also a large group of sculptures whose parts were all made to the same standard. They don't just show the martial power needed to unite a kingdom. More than that, they make a strong statement about what the emperor thinks can be done in a world that is united under his rule. In his tomb, the emperor wrote down his plans for how he would spend his future in his underground palace. These plans still amaze and shock us today, but beyond the awe-inspiring scale and craftsmanship of the terracotta army, there remain unanswered questions that continue to fuel our curiosity. What secrets lie hidden within the unexplored depths of the tomb? What was the true purpose of these life-size soldiers? And what can we learn from the legacy of this enigmatic emperor? These lingering questions serve as an invitation to delve deeper into the mysteries of the terracotta army and the Qin dynasty.